All right, going live in three, two, one. Well, it's time for the working experience, episode number 006. And tonight we have another special guest on, a new guest for the show. And she is a photographer. And I was inspired by a lot of her work. And hold on a second, I had to make sure we were live. And one of the things that I was really impressed by her was the photography, the photographs she's taken are very artistic. And I wanted to bring her on and have a talk with her, and maybe we can see where things go with that. I'm going to bring her on board right now. Hello, Kelly.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
I'm glad to have you on board. I need to ask you how to pronounce your last name again. I know you told me before, so our fans can know how to pronounce your last name.
Perfect. It's Getchonis.
Getchonis. Okay, there we go.
Lithuanian.
Lithuania. Okay. Now, where are you located at right now?
I am outside of Boston,
I
my
want to say,
hometown where I grew up.
could you bring up your microphone just a little, or maybe get a little bit closer to the mic, maybe? Let's see,
Sure thing. Testing, testing. One, two, three.
just to make sure it's a little. Okay. Now okay, go ahead. I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
No problem. I'm in my hometown currently, outside of Boston, in Massachusetts. Yeah.
Ah, so 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 you say hometown, but you've been a world traveler, correct? I see the map behind you, and we were discussing that before we went live.
Yes, I love national parks. I like making trips, road trips, and I was lucky enough to study abroad in Italy and take a photography class at the University of Arts. So that's where it all started for me, was studying abroad, traveling. So both kind of melded together, and I've had it my whole life, and it's a really personal, amazing experience to take photographs for a living and be able to have that as my income for the past 5 years.
That sounds awesome. I mean, so now as far as photography goes, this is something that you started. When did you start becoming interested in photography?
I actually loved photography since I was a child. Um, my middle school had a photographer for National Geographic come in, and she did an amazing presentation and kind of clicked to me. And I went home and told my parents, that's what I want to be. I want to be a National Geographic's photographer. And photography somewhat runs in my family. So I got a camera pretty early on. And then through my higher education in college, that's when I really got to take some classes and take it more seriously and buy a DSLR camera. And that kind of took off from there.
I see. So now, where all did you study before? Where did where did you get most of your training for this?
Mhm. I bounced around a lot. I'm actually notorious transfer student. I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I went to a very small school, very hands-on in Florida called Lynn University. It was amazing. They believe in skipping your general education, going right into the field. So I started in broadcast journalism, actually. And then I started doing elementary education because I love working with kids. And then I transferred to a larger school in South Carolina and started a little bit of art therapy, and then eventually ended up my spring sophomore year at UMass Amherst. So back to my home state. And they have an amazing program. It's a bachelor's degree where you can build your own major, which is awesome. So you take honors classes from 3 different colleges, maybe more or less. And I took classes in communications, film, and I called my degree Communicating Through Visual Arts.
Oh, okay. And now since you've graduated and you've moved on, now you've been doing this, you said, for 5 years. Has it been pretty successful for you?
Absolutely. I've been so lucky to kind of fluidly transition and fall into different types of photography jobs. A lot of people think if they want to be a photographer, they have to shoot weddings or photograph baby shoots. And kind of think that's the only way to be successful as a photographer, but really there are so many different things, and being in an outdoorsy community where there are GoPro games, the Burton Open, and whitewater rafting, and all these amazing things happening all the time, they need photographers to capture those very cool outdoorsy things. So that's where I come in.
That's cool. Now, I'd like to jump, if we could, to the map that's behind you, because before we went live, you discussed that. And could you describe now the map behind you? You stated, I want to make sure everyone knows what we're talking about. That was that's for the National Park Service. Is that what you said to me before we went live?
Yes, yeah, they have all the parks listed on here. I would love to go to all of them. So I marked the ones I've been. I have marked this one because I didn't spend too much time there. Which one is it?
So those little dots, it's hard to tell if that's actually part of the map or there's little okay, I can see them. The
Yeah.
Okay, so the marks, the little like thumbnail or were they like
I'll
tags?
pick you up.
Oh, cool. There we go.
There we go.
Okay, now we can see. Yeah, I see now. So
A lot of the West Coast.
those are the places you have been. Is that what you said?
Where I have been, correct.
Gotcha.
Yes, about 23 different parks. National monuments should count, but I haven't counted those. Well, let me stream out again. One of my recent parks that I went to was White Sands National Monument, and it just recently turned into a national park, which is really great because then it kind of, they get more funding and more people, they can work on the park and making the experience even better. But I had a really amazing experience there, and I got to camp in a sand dune, a beautiful white sand dune, watch the sunset, and take amazing photos.
Now, as far as the photos, would these be found on your website? Any of these that you took? Because
Oh, yeah.
okay,
I
no,
try and keep it up to date, yeah, with my
okay.
recent works.
I have a link. I've already posted it below for those who are interested. If you go to the description, I have a link directly to her website, so you can check it out and see everything that she's done, or what she wants you to see at least. Now, as far as the photo that was below, we had talked about that as well. Would you like to describe that?
This is my first star photograph. It is of a meteor shower. Oh, I'm getting a reflection. This is also something that I like to talk about because I used to work for an art gallery, and this is one of the best ways to encase a photograph is by putting it between glass. So you can see the image in there, and then you have the backing, and then there's glass on top. And it's a reflective photographic paper called silver halide crystal. So it really shows off the image, but the problem is you get a glare. So actually there's, when I worked for a photography gallery for a landscape photographer, they had this amazing non-reflective glass that they recently produced. So you can actually see an image without a glare, which is amazing. But I kind of like a glare because sometimes it just, you know, brings the room into the image and a little reflective. Another option is canvas, which is really awesome because it's very artistic.
Would
Something
that
I like to start doing is printing my photos on canvas and then painting on top of them to kind of mix my love for art and my love for photography.
would that reduce? I would assume that would reduce the glare that we're seeing there, because there's definitely a big glare with what we're seeing in the. We can see your computer monitor and
yeah, you can see everything. So you kind of have to tilt it down, tilt it.
So could you describe the photo itself though? The what the picture is?
Yeah, so this is the Milky Way. We have a meteor on this side, and then we have two of the planets, and it's a long exposure. So I put my ISO, which is camera talk, all the way up, and I put my f-stop all the way up, and then my shutter speed all the way down, and that's how you get all that light coming through the lens. And then this image comes out in about 30 seconds. So I put a plug-in so that my hand, when I pressed the shutter, didn't shake the camera. so it would come off on a timer. You can also set a timer as well. That's something that I wish I knew before I bought the extra plug-in. You just set a timer and it'll click without any shake as well. So you don't have to go and buy the handheld ones.
So when you take this picture and other pictures, and I've seen a lot of your pictures, they're very nice. I mean, very artistic looking. As far as like this, was this done? Were you by yourself, or were you with a group of people? How did you? What were you doing when you did this?
All alone. Just me and the stars. No, it was a meteor shower, so people were camped out. It was on Vail Pass, which is on I-70. So if you're in Vail, you're heading east. If you're from Denver, you're heading west. Very high elevation, very little light pollution. That's why you can see how clear the night sky is. And people were camped out in their camping chairs and looking up at the stars. And it's kind of like Super Bowl moment. When a bright one would come, people would cheer. And it was really cool to be around people, but on my own, and lay in the grass and listen to the wolves howl and just enjoy the beauty of it. I mean, I tried to capture it, but the Milky Way arcs over your head all the way to the other side, and stars were shooting all over the place. So beautiful meteor shower. Tried to capture it.
No, I will say I know what you're talking about when you're trying to capture something that's very beautiful and unfortunate. It's unfortunate when you try to show it to somebody and you're like, look at this. You know, you don't, sometimes the photograph doesn't capture the full everything that you're trying to capture in the image itself. Like, I used to be an airborne traffic reporter for doing traffic reports in the DC area, and I would take my camera up there and I'd take pictures from the plane. It's like it's really nice to get a nice view of the whole city of DC from the air. But when I take the pictures, I bring them back and I show them to the people. They'd be like, oh, they were like bored because they would look at them and go, okay, there's nothing exciting here. And I would try to explain to them, no, you don't understand. It looks so beautiful when you're in the plane. And when you show them, well, of course, I'm not an expert photographer, but still, it just didn't capture the full essence. Do you experience anything like that?
Yes, it's so frustrating. And a big part of why I love photography is the challenge, but also I love going out and seeing beautiful things. Having a camera in my hand is just like an extra bonus add-on. A lot of this is just because I love to look back at it, and I'm very sentimental about where I've been and trying to remember, how it felt when I took the photograph itself, and trying not to get too greedy and trying to take the perfect photograph that it takes away from your experience of seeing something so beautiful. For the first time, when I was in the Grand Canyon, I hiked 10 miles to Havasupai Falls, and that was one of the places I was really excited to see because it's so beautiful. It's a beautiful Grand Canyon red rock with turquoise water and 2 waterfalls, and you get to camp there. And I remember getting to the view, and there are photographers everywhere, Instagrammers, bloggers. I'm a people person. I love the action. I love that everyone's enjoying themselves, having a good time. It's like a party. But for me, it takes restraint to not want to take photos the whole time. So I try and treat it like a process of let my eyes take it all in, walk around, really enjoy, really immerse myself in that moment. And then there will be something that happens where I see something from a different perspective, maybe, or it's something I haven't seen before, because we have these amazing Instagram feeds that have so many amazing, beautiful photographs and are so inspiring. But this is my perspective, and this is what made my heart sing. And that's when I feel like that's my shot, and I focus on that.
Do you ever decide to get rid of any of your photographs? Do you say I don't want this anymore? I'm sure there's things that are just not really worth keeping anyway. But I mean, something that's really you think was really good, then you decide later on, no, I don't really like this. You hold on to everything.
I have a giant hard drive, yes. And I try not to take so many photos because I know I'm just going to be so frustrated once I get there. So I do like to separate my favorites out, but I never delete any because I've had so much time lately to go through my old photographs, and there are so many that I missed out on. So those of you following me on Instagram, you'll see me posting places randomly that I'm not actually there at the moment, but they're just photos that I found that I was like, oh my gosh, I have to share it. It was just so beautiful.
And have any of these photos been like at first you thought, well, this was nothing, and then later on you were like, wow, this is awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah. I would go on these big road trips where I'd see a bunch of different places all in a row. So I was just kind of posting like my favorite one. But then you go back through and you realize there are so many other amazing new perspective ways that you didn't think were so great at the time. But now it brings you back to that moment and shows you a different perspective of a place. Because sometimes you go for like the cliche photo that you think like, oh, that's the Tetons, like that really shows the grand scale. But then I'll go through and see a photograph where you see more of the foreground and the mountains don't look as like majestic. You're not zoomed in, but those layers are really cool. And that's what I like more now. And it's cool to see how my selection process changes as my taste changes, and just having an appreciation for the different types of images you can get all from one place.
No, we do have some. We do have at least one question. Would you like to?
Yay. Yes.
Okay, okay. Trevor G2 asks us, do you have a top 10 list of parks you want to visit?
Oh my gosh, yes. Never ending list. And a lot of places I want to see again because I kind of rushed into road tripping around. I traveled in my tiny Ford Focus and just put a tent up or got a hotel. So a lot of the places I saw, I only saw them for a couple of days or a day or two. And like Yosemite, I would love to go back and spend more time walking through the valley and climbing up Half Dome, like a lot of people like to do. And a place that is really close in my heart is the desert. I love Arizona. I love to see more parts of Utah. I loved the redwoods. Backpacking there was really amazing. If you go to the redwoods, definitely do a hike. You can backpack and camp in different areas. And I would love to actually check out parts of Canada if possible. The Canadian Rockies are beautiful.
So,
Top 10 list, there's a lot of places, but like general geography, around here and up there.
so it seems like your favorites are obviously your favorites are the West, basically everything to the West. You're not talking about much on the East Coast at all. Is there anything on the East Coast you like?
Acadia National Park in Maine. I went there this fall and it was for the first time, and it was so beautiful. The town of Bar Harbor is amazing, outside of the park. And I got to hike up Cadillac Mountain, which is very different because you're at sea level. So you don't get altitude sickness, which is what I was used to when I climb or hike mountains in Colorado, is that altitude. It's really rough. But in Maine, it's beautiful oceans. It was a little rainy. The weather was rough, but I got to do everything I wanted to. And I can't wait to go back to Acadia. It's a beautiful park. Great camping too.
We got another question from Trevor G2. He asks, he says, what about your home state?
Yes.
Eh,
The Cape Cod National Seashore. The dunes. I love P-Town. It's awesome. It's right on the very tip of Cape Cod, and right there is the National Seashore. I got to use my park pass there. That was very exciting because not many parks on this side. It's really cool to hike into those dunes and to see the ocean. You don't get views like that. You don't get those ocean views a lot in Colorado because it's landlocked. So I've been taking advantage of being home, definitely.
And so with the COVID and everything that's going on, are you restricted to what you can do? Are you allowing yourself? I mean, I don't know. Being outdoors, I don't know how much of a restriction there would be. I don't think there'd be very much. I haven't heard very much, except in like California, maybe.
Yes. So I went to Acadia right before the peak of fall season, and they make you do online reservations, and they were very limited. So I was very lucky with my timing. So I didn't see that.
Okay. So, I mean, is it affecting, I mean, is it affecting your ability to go where you want to go at this point? I mean, have you been able to travel? How are the restrictions in traveling in general, I guess, is what I mean.
Yes. Quarantine. So you have to quarantine 2 weeks after being in a different state, take tests, be responsible. I know some people that are friends of mine that are continuing to travel and they just try and practice safe COVID regulations and make sure they're doing their quarantine. I had to road trip from Colorado in June when I first came home to visit, and going across the country during COVID. You have to make sure you're getting a very clean Airbnb. I didn't stay in any hotels that were kind of gross, maybe not being cleaned properly. And I made sure to quarantine separately when I got back to the East Coast. But I did a lot of driving through the night on the last day to get back home because I didn't want to book some random hotel, and made sure I just didn't really go out to restaurants or things like that. Just kind of kept it in the car.
Okay. So really, it didn't really affect you except for the quarantine. You could really still do what you wanted to do. It wasn't really affecting your ability to take all the pictures you were trying to
Yeah,
actually do.
it's
Okay.
good to be outside during COVID. Um, I do think that one of the bummers about COVID was that the rafting season was kind of pushed off a lot. I'm usually a whitewater rafting photographer in the summers, but that wasn't an option for me because people weren't traveling. And when people aren't traveling to Colorado, they're not booking those rafting trips that I would photograph. So I guess like that opportunity didn't come through for me like it usually does. And I was working in a hotel as their in-house photographer, the Ritz-Carlton, Bachelor Gulch in Beaver Creek. And they had to close down March as soon as COVID hit. So all my photo shoots that I had booked all canceled, and they closed down the hotel. So that's kind of where the cord was cut because of the pandemic.
So is this affecting you, like your business wise? Is this really affecting you? Have you been able to keep going with this? Does it seem like you might have to take, I hope you don't have to take another business route or try to take another kind of job to keep going? Or is this really helping you able to keep on going and doing what you want to do with this is what I mean.
Yes, I've been doing a lot of different creative projects, which has been really cool. Um, I haven't really found a perfect position for me on the East Coast where I can do photography the way I would in a very outdoorsy community. Um, there are some opportunities that are possible. I'm considering moving back to the West Coast this spring to Denver to live with some friends, continue camping, traveling, and hopefully getting a bus or a van situation so that I can travel more often and go back to those amazing places and photograph them with my newer upgraded camera and with everything that I've learned from working at landscape photography galleries. I could create better work than what I have in the past. It was more of a hobby when I would travel and take photos. So,
Now, some people might ask, and I think this is an important question, and I think it's something you already have an answer for. So I'm going to ask you, why would photography? Why is it photography itself? Why is it important?
mm, it's a good question. I think that in the bigger picture in life, we're always trying to hold on to moments. We're trying to give everything meaning. I think photography is one of those art forms where you're you're expressing reality and something that touches you that you want to hold on to, that you want to share. I think that's something that's really ingrained in humanity is sharing those beautiful moments with one another, inspiring each other through images. For me, after college, I kind of didn't know exactly what I wanted to do right away. And Instagram was just starting to, I mean, we all kind of started off Instagram just taking photos of our food and our clothing, like outfit of the day kind of things. But then it evolved and people started posting images of parks and being camping and the West Coast. And for me, being in my small town, not knowing what I wanted to do, I gravitated towards that. And that became a tool of me manifesting the next chapter of my life. So photography changed my life because I could see those images and it helped me picture what my life would look like if I was an outdoors person and if I lived on the West Coast.
Have you ever considered branching off into another related field, like say video work?
Absolutely. I think videos are a beautiful way of telling a story.
Okay. The as far as transitioning from photography to video, it obviously there's going to be some differences. Have you explored how that would be done? Or have you actually done any video work so far, or are you sticking with photography for right now?
I have. A really great thing about having a DSLR camera is you can switch to video at any time. So you're getting a high quality video. I started doing that for some of my road trips and making videos to music that I liked at the time and making a music video of my life. And I love making videos, the timing and everything. It can bring you back to a moment. Exactly. And other people, it might inspire them to go see those places because they can actually see what it might be like.
Now, the Trevor G2 has another question. Hold on a second. Trying to remember where this came in. Maybe we'll be able to. He said he's referring to something you said about a newer upgraded camera, and he's asking about info about that camera. Basically, he's not really getting too detailed on what he wants to know. But
Awesome. Should I pull my camera out?
sure, yeah, go ahead.
Awesome. So I had a Nikon, and I stayed with Nikon when I got an upgraded camera. I had a 3200, Nikon D3200, and it was amazing. It was great. The only issue was after my road trip, I got jelly in the shutter and it was stuck. It was really sticky and gross.
Oh, yuck.
Yeah, keep your snacks separate from your gear if you can. And clean your hands before you touch your camera. And I had spent some time in some deserts, so little sand got in, and there were little dots on the lenses that got stuck in, and there was no way of cleaning it. So it was past its time. And I was working in an art gallery at the time, which was really great. And we had a photographer in there. So we had photographers coming in to see some of the work, and we would get talking about cameras. And I got a lot of really great feedback from other photographers. And they said for the price, Nikon D7200 is a really amazing camera. If you're not willing to spend so much, but you want the capabilities to take better. I mean, my star photographs were twice as good, and it has more ISO ability. So this is my new camera, D7200. My favorite lens is a 70 to 300 millimeter. The great thing about telephoto lenses, something that I learned early on, was that if your subject's in the distance and you zoom in, the mountains in the background will actually come forward, and you kind of have this beautiful layering of the focal point reaching forward. So the mountains look even bigger, the person looks even smaller. I can show examples of what that looks like. I just posted something on my Instagram.
Sure.
A really good example. If I can share.
Now, what you're describing there, I don't remember the exact name of the movie effect, but there's a movie effect that's done where they zoom into somebody and pull back the camera at the same time, and it creates kind of an effect where you enhance the person in front of the camera, but the background kind of becomes different, kind of the way you're describing. The most famous one of that, one of the most famous versions of that is in the movie Jaws from 1975, where they do this zoom in or Roy Schneider, who's the main character of the movie, and
Mhm.
it kind of reminds me of what you're describing there. But it's a moving effect, not a stationary effect. So I do not remember the name of the effect right off the top of my head though. So what is this? Go ahead and let me know when you got it there, and I'll try to bring it up on the screen.
So
Oh, there we go. Cool.
So this one I just posted today. So you can see how big those mountains look in the background. So that was taken with this lens and zoomed in all the way so the mountains look even bigger. And then I have another photograph.
Now this is the color in this. This is natural color, right? This is not. You didn't add anything, right?
I love color. Yes. No color was added to the sense where it takes away from the natural beauty. I like contrast. I like a little bit of saturation, but more brilliance than saturation. That's something that I look for in my photos, and I like pairing different colored images next to each other so they complement one another.
Wow, these are really beautiful pictures here.
Thank you. So I have, this is the same image, but a different angle. So you can see I'm standing up instead, but also zoomed in so you can see the.
So that's you in the foreground. Okay, so what did you? I guess you did a time delay or for the photograph to take.
Timers are amazing. It's a really good tool.
So were you by yourself? Were you with a group of people taking pictures, or when you did these, or did this one?
Yes, I did a lot of traveling with my boyfriend at the time. We had met in Italy, and then he's from Connecticut. We moved to Colorado together, and he was a ski instructor. We're both on the East Coast now, but not seeing each other at the moment. So it's great to have shared travel together, but also very difficult on a relationship when you're living out of a small Ford Focus. So you learn a lot about a person that way. So much admiration for one another.
So, what else? I mean, when you're doing these long trips, and taking these photographs, what have you learned? Have you learned anything?
Oh my gosh, so much. I think one of the big things that I learned was when you're seeing so many beautiful places, it takes a toll on your appreciation. Like, just because you're in a beautiful place doesn't mean that you're in a great mood all the time. Like, there's ups and downs. You often aren't getting the right nutrition. That's something that I would do differently if I was on a trip, is I'd put nutrition at the forefront, make sure I'm having protein, because sometimes you just can't get the right foods that you want to give yourself a well-balanced meal. It's just too hard to do. You're not cooking your own meals a lot of the time. And when you're camping, they're just kind of makeshift. And I was a vegetarian at the time, so that made it even harder. And also, budgeting was really hard. You're paying for campsites, you're paying for hotels. There are just certain things that you want to camp, but the winds are too much and you can't set up a tent, so you have to get a hotel, even though you budgeted to camp that night. And I do think that there is a feeling of not having a home. And I was doing that trip for 3 months, 2.5 months, living out of my car, and that not having that sense of home and always looking out the window at these changing landscapes, but not having that sense of belonging or getting involved with the landscape, like planning more hiking trips. There was a lot that I saw. There was a lot of driving.
Yeah.
A lot of driving for a short period of time. So if I were to do it again, I absolutely would want my own kitchen in my van with a meal plan, and I would want to have a week in Yosemite and even longer in the redwoods and all these amazing places, and spend as much time as I want in the desert and not always be on the move to the next place. Like, you just get settled in and you just start to enjoy somewhere, and then you're like, we gotta go. There's more to see and we have a plan. And also, there was a lot that we wanted to do in Southern California, and in the desert as well. And we left in May, in the spring, and the weather was really unpredictable. So we basically got chased out by just days and days of rain that we didn't plan for, and it just was unfortunate. But luckily, Colorado's really close to the desert, so I got to go many, many times after that. But that one trip specifically, we had to cut like 3 weeks off of our original plan because the weather was just so bad. And same with Yosemite. We got there and we pulled up our weather app and it said for the next week it was full rain. And you can't just pitch a tent there. They have reservations like a year in advance to camp in Yosemite Valley. There's not much outside of the valley either.
Really? So as far as like, no, when I was much younger, I took a road trip across the country, and
Nice.
we
How
spent a
was
lot of time. Oh well, we spent a lot of time sleeping in car rest areas.
it?
So,
Yes, familiar place.
and
I feel like home.
and then we get up and that's where we'd actually go in and like clean up and brush our teeth in the restroom area. And it got to be like a regular thing. And the one thing we did discover was that, well, I don't know if this would work for women as much, but for men, you could go to the truck stops and you could actually, there were actually showers that you could use. You just had to say you were a truck driver and you could go in
Yeah,
and use it.
that's true. And another hack that a lot of people do now is just get a Planet Fitness membership. You can
Oh,
go shower at any location, get a nice
okay.
workout in.
Now, did you meet any interesting people along the way? I'm just curious.
Oh my gosh, yes. Definitely in the lineup of photographers when you're all looking at the beautiful sunset at that quintessential view. I'm like, hey, how you doing? What are you doing here? Taking photos? Me too. So you meet a lot of cool photographers but those in between spots when you're just on the road trying to get to the next park, it's hard to meet people that way. So it
Well,
can get a little lonely. But
yeah, but
in the parks around other people and hikers, it's really fun to meet other people that have the same passions as you.
now, have you met any people that have become like long-term friends or acquaintances? Have you like like anything that would be not maybe a friend or even some sort of work associate that you can, trade things with and work with later on? Have you done anything like that? Has anything like that happened for you?
Oh yeah, there is a big club of photographers. So many people that love photography out there. My first job when I moved out to Colorado was a photographer for Vail Resorts through their Epic Mix photography program. So people who were skiing, you could scan their pass, take their photo, and then it would show up on their phone on an app. We would upload all the photos at the end of the day. That was my first photography job. And there was a team of about 20 people and we were all photographers. So I met a lot of people that way and it was so cool to see their individual style of photography. Maybe not in that setting because we all had to take the same type of photographs, which is portrait, but we all had different passions and projects and we would go on trips together and road trip. My friend Rosie is a fantastic photographer and she's really into rock climbing and highlining. So I always piggyback on her really cool highlining and climbing trips. And it's just amazing to see how everyone's growing through their passion for photography.
Are
I
you
feel very lucky.
are you still in contact with a lot of people today?
Yes, they're trying to get me back out there as soon as possible. And I can't wait. It's really great that we all stay in touch and we all really cheer on each other. It's not competitive in any way. And I've had nothing but great experience being friends with other photographers. I know a lot of people think that it's a very competitive field, but I was very lucky and to have multiple jobs where my coworkers were just super supportive and also loved traveling and photography like I did.
Now, talking about social media, you brought up your account there a couple minutes ago. Is that changing photography at all?
Oh yeah. And traveling too. You can just if you like look under certain people's bios, like the photographer couples, travel couples that have hundreds of thousands of followers, they'll give you itineraries of how to travel and what campsites you can go to. And it's amazing resources they just typed up. I wish I thought of doing that when I was doing it because I would have people messaging me all the time where are you staying? What are you doing? And I love sharing all of my travel tips. Um, it's definitely changing the landscape of photography because so many people are flocking to these spots. They're geotagged, and I think a lot of my followers came from me going to new places and they look up the place and they see my photo. So the algorithm is really changing people's grabability of followers because they're offering resources for people to travel more easily. And their photos are amazing. It kind of can get discouraging for a starting photographer who just wants to do it for fun, maybe dreams of that someday. Can be discouraging to see people that are just so talented and always trying to one up each other. And that's something that's really unfortunate for me to see, people breaking the rules in the parks to get the perfect shot. They'll like go over the boundary line on a path that they're trying to restore, and they just want the photographs. So I've seen people break the rules all the time just to try and get that different kind of shot because no one else can do it because they're not willing to go there.
So
That's a problem.
that raises another question. Does anyone get caught? I mean, what if they, is there any
Go to
park
park
ranger?
jail.
Yeah.
Let's book them. I haven't seen it happen. It would be great if they actually did get in trouble. I do think that photographers are really good at calling each other out on social media. Someone that I like to follow is Brooke Little Bear on Instagram, and she's a wildlife photographer, and she constantly preaches about using the lenses to get zoomed in and not disturb the animal. Do not feed the animals. I cannot imagine getting in an animal's space just for a photo. Like, that's ridiculous. You got to draw the line somewhere.
Gotcha. Now, as far as these locations that you're talking about, like geolocations for your picture, where are these? Are these on your sites, like on Instagram, or where, can you do? I'm pardon my ignorance. I know I've seen that on Google Maps where
Mm-hmm.
people have like they'll post their own pictures on Google Maps, and it'll be like a rotating picture that you can rotate around and see.
Yes,
Uh,
I do that all the time.
is that similar to what you're doing?
It's amazing. It's right under your name, right above the photograph. It's squeezed in there, and it's got like the little mark, the location mark, and you can actually click on that and see other photographs that were taken at the same location. So they're all grouped together in one spot. So if someone types in, Yosemite, you can look at whatever photos were taken that day or the most popular photographs, and then you can kind of sift through that and help plan maybe what kind of photographs you want to take, or look up for different geotags. It's a great way to bounce around different profiles and find new accounts that you like that inspire you.
Gotcha. So, how would you? This is a question I know you'll have an answer for. Was how do you stand out as a photographer?
It's a great question. Um, I think for me, photographing as many different subjects is a really great way of building different tools to being a good photographer. Um, I found that my background in photojournalism and trying to tell a story through photographs is a way of standing out. I was really lucky to have the opportunity to work freelance for the Vale Daily newspaper the summer and a year before I left. And that opened a lot of doors to me photographing different subjects in new ways. And it's amazing how I would go from photographing maybe like a rodeo show and then go on a hike, and my photographs look a little bit different. Like I've changed my settings a little bit, just taking something that's a little more immediate shutter to freeze the snowflakes or something different, or going and taking waterfall photographs that are longer exposures because I'm just trying something different with the camera. Is the more time you have with the camera in your hands, the more that machine is going to become a part of your expression of what you're seeing. So it just inspires you to photograph in different ways. So I like the thing that I like about my photographs is that they're colorful. I love color in nature. I connect color with emotion. And when I am immersed in a yellow field with yellow trees, with the beautiful white birches, that to me is so playful and beautiful. It might bring someone joy. And that's what I try to do to stand out, is what brings me so much joy, not just a pretty photo that I think would be popular that people might like.
So, as far as your experience in taking photographs, do you you talked about rodeos or a rodeo. Have you done anything else as far as like sporting events or anything political or anything like that?
Yes, I've done all of those. I've done there was a for Senator Polis there, he did a speech. So I took photos of him, and I took photos of the Burton Open, which is amazing. It's one of the big events that Vail hosts where all the athletes come and they compete, and I got to get a press pass and go backstage and see backstage. That's my theater coming out. What is it called? Behind the scenes, and see their interview. I guess it would be called like the press section of the press meeting, where they get to answer all the questions about their training. And it was so cool to see the athletes after their amazing show of tricks, and being on the slope side to get those photographs and seeing it up close where other people can't get as close. It's really awesome. And being in line with other photographers too, from different magazines, and seeing how their lifestyle is traveling for photography. It's really fun. And then I also did some soccer games. Football games was really fun, also difficult because those would be at night. So I would have to change my settings to shoot people who were running at night, which is really difficult to get a freeze frame in those dark lighting. So everything really challenged me in so many ways. And then whitewater rafting photography, getting my settings right to catch the droplets of water frozen in their faces. And it's just every single thing kind of added up to me just being so comfortable with my camera.
So, as when you get to be with these other photographers, like you said, from different magazines and other sources, do you be are you ever inspired? Do you feel like emulating anything that they've done? Do you look at it and go, wow, they took a picture that I really like. I like how they did that, and maybe I could do what they're doing.
Yeah, I'm always like, do you want to hang out? We can share stories. Yeah, it's amazing to be inspired by strong women in the field and their perspective, and their education in photography and their portfolio. And I think it's really amazing to see the growth in a photographer and following them and seeing what they're inspired by.
Now, there was a couple of things you wanted to talk about, and I wanted to make sure we see if we could cover these. Um, k- I'm sorry, I'm trying to. Katie Lee during the Women's North opening. Do you know what I'm referring to?
Yes, it's Women's Month. And she's my favorite woman. She's
Is-
amazing. I remember when I first heard about her, I love Glen Canyon, but unfortunately the Glen Dam is the reason why that water goes through the desert. It looks
well,
unnatural because it is unnatural. And Katie Lee is a really amazing activist that wanted to fight for the deserts before they dammed and changed the rivers. So she's an
sorry,
amazing person.
I didn't mean to interrupt you there. Could you describe who she is exactly? I don't know if everyone's going to know who she is or what she's doing. I'll bring her up, bring up the website too while we're talking.
Awesome. Yeah. Katie Lee was a singer, actress, big in Hollywood, but she kind of left that all behind when she went back to the desert. She grew up in Arizona, and when she found out that they were going to put a dam up and change the Colorado River to flow into the Glen Canyon, she started writing music about, fighting that. Um, oh, that's
Oh,
not good. spitting bear and didn't know it.
Is this? I'm sorry. This is the link that I
No.
maybe.
Oh, I can share my screen. I have
Yeah. Let me
it
go ahead
pulled
and
up.
minimize this. Sorry. Yeah.
I
Go
can
ahead and
do it.
bring. Yeah.
I'm a pro. Katie Lee, Our Lady of Glen. Uh, let's see if I did it.
Okay. Here we go.
Our Lady of Glen Canyon.
Okay. So I'm sorry. What were you would before I interrupted you with that? What were you saying about her again? I'm sorry.
She is one of my role models because she used her life to really be an activist. Although the dam actually happened and it flooded parts of Arizona, the desert that are so beautiful, she still wants to spread awareness about keeping things natural and not putting up dams and not changing our environment. You know, it's something moving forward. Maybe we won't make the same mistake. And
As
she's a very inspiring person because she loved the desert so much. It's all she wanted to do. Even though she had fame and success as a singer and actress, she quit all that to be outside in the canyon, rafting the river and just enjoying life in the outdoors.
Gotcha. So as far as what else has she inspired? Has she inspired you to do anything else as far as your career?
Yeah, I would love to continue to photograph places that hopefully don't get changed, but kind of showcase that, you know, our environment is changing, climate is changing, everything's evolving and shifting. My life story, I want it to be about nature and being outside and seeing all the beautiful places that there are to offer, because I do feel like when we get out there and we see those amazing views, it expands our sense of feeling like we belong on this earth and we want to take care of it. So she inspired me to spend outside and feel more connected to our beautiful planet and seeing more places.
Hold on a
Hold on a
second.
second.
Hold on.
Hold on.
Your
You're
audio
up.
was getting really distorted there for a second. Go ahead and try talking now.
Hi.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Please,
she's my
please.
role. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Let me explain what happened, just so you know. It sounded like you're like an alien from another planet. Your voice got all warbly, and it really sounded bizarre for about 5 seconds there. That's why I had to stop you. So yeah, you sound fine now. You sound perfectly fine.
It was something I said. I guess it made the aliens upset. They had to cut me off. They're like, she's telling everyone to get outside. Oh no, and to care about the planet. Should probably tap into her microphone.
No,
Yeah,
no,
I do think the more that people see images of being outside and they're exposed to how beautiful our planet is, that will want to take care of it and spend more time going outside. There's a huge shift in people going to the parks. What's it going to look like for the next generation? All these park pass holders they're finding are of the older generation. How do we inspire our kids to get out there and, you know, see these beautiful vistas and feel something for nature and the planet and get reconnected again?
gotcha. Now, I want to try and change the topic just a little bit, but
Mhm.
um, as far as now, when you take your pictures, is there any editing involved with the actual when you're finished with the pictures? Do you do anything to change what they look like afterwards?
This is something that I'm very passionate about. I don't like composites. I don't like when people make it their craft project to take one image and then put it with another, or like they like the way it looks on the bottom, but then they put a different sky in there. And while it can be cool, I love landscape photography to be what I saw, not manipulated. I don't do anything crazy. I just like to enhance the colors maybe just a little bit just to show off the beauty, but not take away from the fact. And my editing style has changed over time a lot. I tend to do less now in like the contrast, and try not to manipulate any photos so that you really get a sense of this is real. That's how it really looked. Because I want people to see my photography and not say like, oh, that's not real. Like
Uh,
that's not what it actually looked like. Because to me, in my eyes, in that moment, that's how gorgeous it looked.
Now, do you get accused of that at all by people saying that you faked what was on the image?
Not yet.
Yeah, that's good.
I'll just send them this link and tell them, hey, I swear that no over manipulation. Hopefully they can tell by how passionate I am about it that I just don't like where it's headed. I don't like too many people trying to one up each other. And it's not about that. In landscape photography, I feel like people who are overlapping all these different stars and doing star tracking and overcomplicating it, like that's just not me to overcomplicate the process. It may be for them, but the type of photographer I am is the kind that just feels like an adventurer when I have my camera in my hand and I'm enjoying the moment, I'm seeing it, and then I take a quick click before I leave, and that's my way of sharing and giving back.
Now this is a question I want to ask you. This is based on my own personal experience. My dad, I told you this before we did our interview, that photography runs in my family. I told you my grandfather was a photographer. My dad, my uncles on my dad's side, a couple of my cousins, at least a couple of my cousins, maybe more, have done photography. And when I was a child, my dad would take me to different sporting events, and he would take me. Now, I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but he would take me to get into a dark room to get the pictures developed. Have you ever been into a developing room where they would actually, because you didn't want the light to expose the film? This is before digital cameras. Have you ever been in an environment like that where they actually developed the film?
Yes, at Florence University of the Arts, I took a digital photography class, but they also let us see the old way of developing photos, which was really cool. And when I signed up for the class, I was so excited because I thought, oh, I'm going to be out taking photos the whole time. Really, it's 5 hours sitting at a computer looking through every single photo you took outside of the classroom and then editing them and then working on printing them. So that's a big difference. Something I'm really excited about since I got home is I have inherited my great grandfather's collection of cameras. And so I'm hoping to set up and start using film just on the side as a hobby. I actually have one of his old Leica cameras here that I'm really excited. It's in this really cool case.
Wow.
And isn't she beautiful?
How old
From
is that?
this to this, big difference.
How old is your grandfather's camera? Is it that must be when was that made? I don't know. Is like early 20th century?
I don't have the receipt, unfortunately, but yeah, it's definitely got to be old. And he's got some Canons, he's got two Leicas, and yeah, I'm really excited to diving into that. Some Polaroid cameras too, for those hipsters out there. I'll be taking some Polaroids as well.
Have
Yeah,
you ever
photography, you can go in so many different directions, including going back and developing photos. The old
have you ever seen the way they took photographs back during back in the American Civil War, where they took them on tin plates?
Yes,
And
so cool.
yeah, I've seen some specials on like Discovery or Learning Channel, a few of those where there's actually photographers out there that just do the photography the way it was done back then. They don't do anything modern, and it's like they're trying to preserve something historic in the and keep it going, and it's done pretty well. I assume you've seen the who are the two famous photographers from the Civil War? Brady, and I forget the other guy's name. Are you familiar with what I'm talking about?
Yes, I am. More of an Ansel Adams fan, personally. Just going back to nature. But yeah, there is a guy in Leadville in Colorado that does that tin development for portraits, and there's another guy too that does it. Yeah, there are some amazing landscape photographers that are getting back into that old way of printing,
Oh,
and I think
wow.
it's so cool.
So, so they do it, I mean, do they do it to show people how it's done, or they just do it because they enjoy that process, or is there any benefit to doing it that way? Well, like to get, obviously, we're most of all your photographs are mostly digital. I assume you're not doing anything any other way, and that would I would assume that that might take away from some sort of the depth, in some way. I know because I work in audio. When you're dealing with digital audio, that takes away some of the depth and the resolution of the audio. It takes away some of the warmth. Do you have that same problem with digital photographs?
Oh yeah, I'm a firm believer of that. There are some things though that you can capture on a digital camera that you cannot capture on the older models, which I'm grateful for. And it's amazing how fast your photography can grow because you have these SD cards where you can just keep shooting and shooting, taking as many photos as you want to find out where the best one is. But there is something about the development process of those types of cameras. If we were to do like a follow-up podcast, I actually have a friend that does shoots only on film that I met recently that lives in the Boston area, and he loves working with film and knows a lot about the process. So I was starting to learn a little bit from him, but I do feel like there is a certain artistic expression that you can get from film that you cannot get from digital, unfortunately. You can add a filter onto a digital photo, but with the printing process from the negative of a film photograph, there's just something special about it that I don't think you could ever get from a digital, which is good. Maybe
Now,
it will never go away.
as far as f- uh, color versus black and white is concerned, do you ever take photos in black and white?
I don't ever take them in black and white, but I do edit them without. So there's actually a really interesting way of making a photograph black and white. A lot of people just think it's like a click black and white, but you actually can lower down your saturation and your vibrance. And that way you're not changing the contrast or anything else. It's not like adding on a black and white filter on like Instagram. You just take away the color slowly, and then you'll see the beautiful contrast that the photo naturally has. So sometimes I will switch to black and white. I actually can bring up a photo that I took in my Italy class that I have printed out. I'll just grab it real quick.
Sure. And for those who are watching, oh, that was okay. That was quick.
So
What?
this one was taken at night. Sorry, the reflection.
That's
Uh,
fine. You describe what we're seeing there, so we know what we're seeing. It's
so
a
this man is looking into a shop, and I loved the way the shadows were reflecting on the street. And then there you can see you're kind of on the main street off of the Duomo. So it's a late at night photograph. I thought it looked amazing in black and white because you really get the pattern on the street. It's more street photography, which is kind of what I had to do because I was in Florence, Italy, and not in a national park. So that's kind of where it started for me, actually, was taking photos of people.
interesting. The reason I ask about black and white and color is because, like I said, I grew up in a family that was my dad was a photographer, and most of his pictures were often in black and white, and his idea was it showed the contrast better.
Hmm. Yeah,
Um,
not all photos look good in black and white.
okay.
So I do think that you have to follow these rules of, is there enough contrast? Is it going to be too dark? Is there too much darkness in the photograph if you turn it black and white?
the the um the thing for me though, see, when I grew up, we had a black and white television. So I
Oh,
when I was a kid, I got tired of black and white television. So when we got a color TV, I was like happy. And then I was like, my dad was still taking pictures in black and white. So I was like, well, why don't you put them in color? So I don't think he liked me saying that to him. So
thanks. Yeah, color makes me happy for sure. Um, black and white's a mood. We do have a cool question.
Yeah.
I saw, do you photograph in RAW now and RAW plus large? Um, so there is a setting on your camera where you can take a JPEG where they add color into the photograph and then like just a little bit to balance it out. And then if you shoot in RAW, that is exactly what you're getting from the mirror image of what the photograph you're taking. So I was actually doing RAW images as well for my landscape photos so that when I took them to edit, I had complete control over it. And it's a larger file size. So when you print them, you get a better DPI, which is dots per inch. So it's the pixels, more pixelated or not. A lot of photographers love medium format, which means you can blow up the photograph as big as you want. Those cameras are pretty expensive. So it'd be smart if you're just testing something out, maybe renting equipment. I was lucky when I worked at the Ritz-Carlton at their photography concierge, they had a Canon camera, which is kind of crazy because I'm Nikon. So I got to learn from the Canon perspective to shoot manually on those cameras. It's only a couple of settings that are opposite, but for the most part, it's like shooting the same camera. But it was a better quality camera. It was a 5D Mark II and an amazing telephoto lens. Sometimes getting a better lens on a lesser body is just all you need to up your photographs even more. A really good lens really makes an image.
So I mean, that raises a good question because I'm not into photography. But as far as switching cameras, is it usually a simple process? I always thought it would just be relatively simple. But what you're saying is there were some settings that were different. Is it common to be? Does it ever become difficult when you switch to a different camera or type
Yeah.
of camera?
It's pretty funny. So I feel like they did this on purpose just to like separate people and not say like this is the same camera or not. It's literally the button on the front. This when you're changing your f-stop, instead of going left, you go right, and on the back, instead of going, it's just the opposite of this. And something that I learned when I was doing manual settings was that if I switched to audio, I could check out what the camera was recommending, and then I switch back to manual so that my setting and change the settings then, and then I can actually change a little bit the lightness, the darkness, the shutter speed on my own, but I have a better sense of what is going to turn out as a good image and not a blurry image. So using your auto, switching from auto to manual when you're just starting to learn is a really cool tip that I first started out with that made my transition to manual shooting a lot easier.
So as far as since you run your own business, what about copyright? Have you ever had any issues with copyright from your perspective, like someone stealing your work or using your work without your permission, or from another perspective, someone claiming that you took something that belonged to them?
Yeah. It's funny because one of my friends was visiting who's also a photographer, and I was on Instagram and I said, "Oh my God, that's my photo." But they didn't give me any credit. And I was just happy to see it. I was like, "Oh, what a compliment. Like they're using my photo and look at how many likes it has." And my friend was like, "You can't do that. That's your photo. You have to ask them to either take it down or give you credit." And that was the first time it hit me like, "Oh my gosh, I should just make sure that if I see my photograph that I'm getting credit for it." So I haven't had any issues like that since, luckily. But it does happen. People will use your images for their own accounts without giving you credit.
Yeah, from a YouTube perspective, I've had that happen to me a few times with my own videos, so I know what it's like. As far as but no one has ever claimed that you took something of theirs, though. I mean, something that may have looked so similar, they're like, "Oh, that must be mine," and they try to claim it as their own.
No,
I
no,
never.
never happened. Not yet, knock on wood. I hope no one thinks that my style is exactly like theirs. I do think that being in a community of other photographers and we're both shooting the same thing, we'll look at each other's photos and we're in the same place at the same time, but they look very different.
Hmm.
Like, it's just personal choices when you're photographing can really change an image. Just a little bit of composition or different type of lenses can really change.
Now, Trevor G2 asks a question. Do you watermark your images or that
Yeah,
you post?
I do. I do. Especially when I shoot events, I make sure if I'm sharing the images for clients to choose from, I have to watermark them so they don't just take the images and not pay me. That's kind of important. So I
Yeah.
put a watermark right over it. And then once they choose the images they want, then I remove the watermark and send them a gallery so they can download it.
Okay. Now, talking about now, that brings up another question as far as like your business, your website, which is basically where people can see your are there watermarked images on that as well?
No, no, and I do think that there is something to say about like those images that I took. I love them dearly, but they're not something that I would copyright in this sense where I would try to sell them in an edition order. So like when you're selling photographs in a gallery, you have an edition size of how many you're going to print of that image, no matter what size it is. Um, like an edition of 10, I'm only going to make 10 of these. I'm only going to sell 10, and that's why it's this price. And once I sell them, they're done. My photographs on my website, you can order them as prints if you'd like. And it would be a higher quality than what's on the website. I have all the images to print. If you tried to print from my website, I'm so sorry, it's not going to look good because websites don't let you upload the full file. So that's something that people might not understand and try to print right from a website, but it's not going to look as good as going to the artist and getting the full resolution image from directly from the artist.
So as far as like when anything that you sell, do you have anything that's exclusive? Like do you sell like if you have something would you sell to only one group or one person?
The $1 million photo.
Yes.
Yes. I worked in a gallery where we had $1 million photograph and we couldn't just show anybody. We
Oh
only
really?
showed clients that, checked out and might actually purchase $1 million photograph. And it was so special and so beautiful. It was this abstract image where you open the shutter and then you pull the camera down a little bit and it blends it. So it's a really artistic photograph. Um, Something that can't be recreated to the exact form that it was. Um, do I have that? No, not yet. I don't have one image that stands out to me that would be my, $1 million photograph. And if I did, I would make sure that you can make it as big as you want. So it would have to be shot on a medium format camera. We
Now,
need more pixels per square inch so you can make it a larger image.
I understand. So basically the images that we're seeing on what you were leading up to when you talk about that is the image you're seeing on there, even if they downloaded it, even though technically when someone looks at a picture, it's already on their computer already. You're saying that that image is just not going to be as good a quality as if what they would have gotten if they got it from you directly, is what you're saying, right?
Yes, yes.
The
Don't feel it. Not gonna work.
I do find it funny that once in a while I'll go to a website and I'll do a right click to save the picture. And this only doesn't happen very often. Well, someone will say, no, you can't steal from me. It's like, well, the image is already on my computer. I'm not
Yeah,
really stealing.
look at it.
I'm not stealing something that's already on my computer. I'm just trying to save it to my computer in another way. But the one thing I did want to ask though is about the creation of your website. How did you get around to doing that?
So much fun. I love making a website. Um, I really wanted to showcase the different types of photography that I do. So I do have a portrait page where I show some of my engagement shoots from the past year. And then I have a products page where I showcase a jewelry company that I got to photograph for, which was really different and fun to create my own studio. And then I have my travel portfolio. So it's really just my work from my whole life all in one place. And I used Wix site, which is a really great company because they let you do it for free until you want to buy the domain. So I haven't paid for it yet, but once I get to a point where I have new work that I'm really excited about, so once I'm back on the West Coast photographing even more, then I will publish a really great print photography page.
Gotcha. Now,
Yeah.
as far as the work you do, do you like to work for do you like it better when you're working for yourself or working for other people?
I like the balance of both. Um, when I work for myself, it doesn't feel like work at all. And really, when I'm working for other people, a lot of the time I am by myself anyway. So it's nice to not have to do the business end of it and just be the creative. That was an amazing opportunity for me, was to just be the photographer and not the business mindset. It allowed me to focus more on the creative side of it and developing that part. And now that I've done it enough, I would feel comfortable starting my own business on my own and taking on more responsibilities. But I think if you're just starting out and you're finding your voice as a photographer and your style, it's really great to partner up with companies that know how to work with new photographers.
Are there a lot out there?
Absolutely, yeah. I worked for a really great company that has multiple locations in different hotels, and they take family photos. So if you're on vacation, it's a quick photo shoot. It's actually free to take the photos, and then you buy them after if you like them. And then we make cute videos, really fun. And it's like a great memento to take home, a souvenir from your trip. So I found the experience so rewarding to be a part of people's vacations and make them smile and make them laugh and play in the snow. And then they look at the photos and they're like, wow, I look like a movie star. How did you do that? And I'm like, it's just you at your happiest. And it would make me smile to see them look at themselves like, wow, like this is our family vacation. We'll have these photos forever. So that was really rewarding for me. And then doing rafting photography, I would sit by the river, take the photos. Once the boats went through, I would upload them at a Starbucks. And then I would have 2 hours in between the next boat trip, and I'd go for a bike ride or rollerblade or go to the lake and go for a swim. And then I'd shoot some more boats, and I wouldn't even have to have a boss at the time. Like, she would run the whole back end of it. And I would just do that every day. And it was a lot of fun to not have to worry about the business side of things.
Now, do you have anything that you're working on now that you'd like to promote?
Right now, I'm just starting to gear up again for some more road trips. Um, if you can follow me on my Instagram and my YouTube channel, I am hopefully going to come out with some new trip itineraries, travel plans, and photographing, being a photographer on the road. It'll be a lot of fun.
Okay. Well, what I will do is I already have the link to your website in the description. Is the Instagram on there as well? I forgot to look.
Yes, it's Kelly, Kelly underscore outside, outside,
Okay.
Kelly outside, because I'm always outside.
Now I'm looking at the portraits. The page on there where you have portraits. Is that? And I notice there's a lot of couple or four different, a few different couples on there. Are these like? I guess they're like weddings, or maybe I don't know if they're weddings. Do you do weddings at all?
I was supposed to do a wedding this summer, but COVID canceled that. So I guess that's another way COVID messed up my plans. And it was supposed to be a beautiful mountain wedding up in this cabin in Midturn, the neighboring town to Vail. And it was beautiful wedding. They're hopefully going to do one next year. Those ones that are on my website are engagements. If I were to do a wedding, I don't know if I'd put necessarily those photos on my website, depending on what the client wants and is okay with. I am looking to hopefully do some weddings, but I haven't done any yet. I was approached by the Not an Amazing Wedding website where you can advertise and book weddings through that service. So something I consider after settling in and moving into a new place. Is getting into hopefully some weddings, some events.
What was that website again? I've never heard of that. Could you tell me what was that called again?
So KNOT, the knot, like tying the knot.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And you can book like florists, other I think you can book like basically your whole wedding through this website. It's pretty awesome. Different vendors. So mine would be the photography side of it.
Okay. Well, I say let's go ahead and wrap everything up here. If there's anything else you'd like to add before we
Yeah.
uh
Tie the knot. Wrap. No, I am really, really grateful that you took the time to talk to me about my photography. I think that photography is just so amazing. And I hope from listening to me, maybe someone goes and buys a camera and gets out there and spends some time in nature, because having a camera in your hand really heightens your awareness and makes you open your eyes and see things differently. So hopefully I inspired some people today.
I think you have. I mean, you really you inspired me to want to learn more about this as well. So,
Yes. So
okay, well, I appreciate you being on, and for everyone watching, we'll probably have another show sometime this week, maybe next week as well. So we'll see if Kelly wants to come back and join us as well.
perfect.
Anyway, hang on, Kelly, while we wrap everything up. Don't go anywhere just yet. And thanks again for being on.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.